Hello, this is the video for Great Depression number 4, talking about Roosevelt in the beginning of the New Deal. Here's our essential question. How did the New Deal attempt to fix the Great Depression? Remember, whenever you're watching this video, you can always pause or rewind if I go too fast, or you just want to hear me explain something a second time. I'm going to first start off this video actually with a different video explaining a little bit about Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Here was this aristocrat from Dutchess County, confined to a wheelchair, Harvard educated, but because of his almost innate sense of communication skills and the medium of radio, he was transported into the living rooms of almost every home in America. And in our household, FDR was a demigod. He was the voice that always gave them hope. My parents really worshiped FDR. And it was not just because of policies, they felt connected to him because of that great warm radio voice and that amazing ability that he had to speak directly to the fears and the hopes of the American people.
I can assure you that it is safer for you to keep your money in a reopened bank than to keep it under the mattress.
FDR and the Great Depression and the New Deal was an amazing time because FDR was about establishing hope, trying to bring hope back to life for a people that caught in this unbelievably chaotic period of economic chaos and stress.
In a lot of ways, FDR was actually an extremely unlikely figure to become a sort of moral and visionary leader in the ways that he did. Now, I think there's a great myth of FDR that he came into office, the country rallied around him, and the Depression was eventually solved. Now, that's not true. FDR was hated passionately by large portions of the population, and yet he did something really significant in those first months. First of all, he acted, and he acted in significant ways, and he came in saying, we can whip this thing, and whether or not he quite did it in those first months, he brought dramatic new ideas to the table and really did upend a lot of assumptions and make the idea that change really was possible a reality in many ways.
This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper.
Anytime we examine the New Deal, the legislation that FDR initiated as swiftly as he took the oath of office, you have to put it in the context of what had come before. We'd had a run of Republican pro-business presidents of the United States. Herbert Hoover was one of them, Cal Coolidge was another one, obviously. FDR came along and determined that something much bolder was needed to save the country, to provide a kind of a lifeboat, if you will, legislatively. So the New Deal was a real upheaval of everything that had gone before. And interestingly, the Republicans in Congress were willing to go along because the country was in such desperate shape. The idea of Social Security or public works programs, the WPA, the various other agricultural programs, which became critically important to the restoration of American agriculture and the modernization. The Republicans were willing to try anything at that point because we were on the precipice. The entire country could have gone down, and almost did, from an economic point of view.
Okay. So that's just a very good short summary and just a reminder of who President Roosevelt is. So remember, Roosevelt wants to fix the Great Depression. His main goal is to make things possible for people to spend money again. The biggest way is the government is going to give people jobs. But the very first thing he does is not give jobs to people, but make people feel like their money can be safe. Remember that so many Americans had lost maybe all or most of their money through bank runs. And so what he did is he tried to make people feel like banks were safe again. And so he declared a bank holiday where he would say all the banks in the country are going to be shut down. I think it was for a week. And it would be a way that he could give those banks a break so they wouldn't go out of business again, but also so he could talk with the people and explain to them what they need to do with banks and why they should trust banks and why they shouldn't go on a bank run. You heard in the video that we just watched that President Roosevelt liked to go over the radio and explain to people what his policy was or what he believed. That was very new in the 1930s. No president had really ever done that before, talked to the people like that. Today, we talk about presidents using Twitter a lot. That's kind of Roosevelt's version of Twitter, was going on the radio and talking to the people of the 1930s. Okay. He would have these weekly radio shows called Fireside Chats. And he called it that because it's almost like Roosevelt was sitting in the living room with you, sitting by the fireside and talking about what the government was going to do to fix the Great Depression. He would explain to people and try to talk to them like he was right there, try to explain to them in simple terms and in ways that they could understand what the economic issue is and what the government's doing to fix it. Remember, you only have to write down what's in yellow on these slides. If I'm going too fast, you can always pause or rewind. So I'm going to play a little bit of a real fireside chat so you can hear a little bit about what this sounded like.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My friends, I want to talk for a few minutes with the people of the United States about banking, to talk with the comparatively few who understand the mechanics of banking, but more particularly with the overwhelming majority of you who use banks for the making of deposits and the drawing of checks. I want to tell you what has been done in the last few days and why it was done and what the next steps are going to be.
So I hear in that video that he's explaining to them, this is what we've done, this is what we're going to do, trying to explain to people about the banks, what needs to be done. Okay, maybe not as exciting as the stuff that's put on TV today, but in the 1930s, this was revolutionary. And so the way he's going to make banks safe for people again is by creating a group called the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. This group is supposed to protect people's money in banks. If you put your money into a bank and that bank would go out of business, you would get your money back. See, this was not true before the FDIC. Before the FDIC, if you lost your money, it was just gone. Now, if the bank went out of business because there was a bank run, you would get up to $5,000 back. Today, that number, the FDIC is still around today. Today, you can put up to $250,000 into a bank and you can get that back. I've had this question before. Well, what about rich people? What happens to their money? Most of the time, rich people don't put that much money into a bank. Usually, rich people put that money into stocks or bonds or other investments in the stock market, and to make more money there. You just make more money in the stock market than you do in a bank. Okay, so the FDIC is supposed to protect your money. Okay. If you go to a bank today after school, you go to the Bank of Sun Prairie, you go to US Bank, you'll see when you walk into the door, there will be somewhere a gold sticker like this. It's usually a gold or black sticker. It looks like this. That means that bank is insured. That means your money is protected in that bank. If you go to a bank and it doesn't have that sticker, I would not put my money there. And there's different, if you go to like a credit union, there's different things that are protecting those money there too. So that's a little bit different. The New Deal also wanted to go and protect farmers. Remember, farmers are having a lot of problems because they had grown too much food in the 1920s. And so because they grew so much food, the price of food was really low. And so the New Deal created an act, a rule called the Agricultural Adjustment Act. What it said was, okay, if a lot of food means prices go down, let's lower the amount of food so prices go up. So how do you lower the amount of food there is? Well, they go to a farmer and say, hey, Farmer Joe, we see you have your big square field right here. And for the last 10 years, you've been growing food all on this land. Your nice square piece of land here. You've grown so much food on this field. Well, we're going to come along with the AAA and we're going to tell you, don't grow crops on the half of your land. Only grow crops on part of your land. So that forces you to grow less food. So there's less food, which means overall, when all the farmers are doing it, the price of the food goes up. So not only are farmers getting paid more for the crops they're growing, but farmers are also getting paid by the AAA not to grow all their crops. So they don't grow crops in this part of their land anymore. They get paid by the AAA not to grow there. So this is another program designed to help farmers. And another group that is still around today is called the Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC. The SEC basically, it does a lot of complicated things that we're not going to get into, but the main thing you need to know is it creates rules for the stock market. It makes sure that investors and people who are making money in the stock market aren't doing anything shady. Now, do people do sketchy things still today? Yeah. The SEC's job is to make sure they're not doing anything illegal. The SEC is in the news a lot right now because of the whole GameStop stuff, talking about doing investigations into Robinhood app, and if you're all in that news, you've probably seen that. But the SEC makes sure that nothing illegal is happening, okay? And they're still around today. They're still watching the stock market to make sure things are fair. Now, not everybody liked the New Deal, and I've gone over a couple programs already. There's going to be more that we talk about and more you'll read about today. But some people didn't like the New Deal, like this man. His name was Huey Long, and he's a senator. He thought that the New Deal didn't go far enough. In fact, he believed the New Deal should have given more money to the people. He had a plan called Share Our Wealth, where we said, if you make more than $1 million a year, we're going to tax you 100%. So that means the most money you could ever make in a year is $1 million. No one can make more than that. If you make $1,001, the government's going to take your $1 away. If you make $10 million, your government's going to take away $9 million of that. Okay, and then they would take all this extra money and share it out with the rest of the people. It's a redistribution of wealth. Okay, this is a very radical solution. And he would gain a lot of following. People really agreed with this, especially, you know, when they're struggling and it seems like some rich people are still doing good. It becomes very attractive to a lot of people of taking away lots of money from the rich and giving it to the poor. And there was some fear of Roosevelt that he might run for president and he might get a lot of popularity. However, Huey Long was assassinated and killed. So we never found out what would have happened. And so in this graph, we can see the unemployment levels during the Great Depression. When you read the primary sources in the other group, you'll find out more about some of the groups that will actually give jobs to people. But here we can see that this is the unemployment rate. So when this line goes up, more people are out of jobs. Here you can see this dot, the stock market crashes, and more people are losing their jobs all the way up to about 25%. And you can see this dot, when Roosevelt becomes president, it starts to slowly decline. So more people are starting to get their jobs, but even after 4 years, unemployment level is still around 10 to 15%. So there's still millions of Americans who are out of a job, even after 4 years of Roosevelt becoming president and 4 years of the New Deal. This document shows us how businesses are doing. In the 1920s, we talked about how businesses were doing well, they're growing, and the stock market crashes and it falls because all those businesses went bankrupt. And then when Roosevelt becomes president, they start growing quickly. So there are some good things happening with this New Deal program. And so in 1936, President Roosevelt would run for re-election and he would win an overwhelming victory. That's it for this video. You'll find out in the other group some different ways that the New Deal would hire people for jobs. If you have questions, please let Mr. Barth know. Thank you.